Welcome to Construction Cashflow. The faster cash flows, the faster wealth grows. I'm your host, Stu Davidson, and I'd like to take a moment to introduce our incredible sponsor, Know Your Numbers. Understanding your cash flow is the cornerstone of success. It's what Construction Cashflow and Know Your Numbers are all about. For more about Know Your Numbers, click the Know Your Numbers link in the podcast notes to start your journey of financial enlightenment that could literally transform your business. In this episode, I'm thrilled to introduce our exceptional guest, Jelena van Wieren. Her 20-year journey in real estate investing spans continents, filled with remarkable highs, challenging lows, and invaluable lessons. Jelena's insights are a beacon of inspiration as she discusses her journey and the key factors needed to become a successful property investor, from the importance of mental and emotional readiness to her unwavering drive to complete what she starts. Her wisdom is a testament to resilience in the property development field. Continuous self-development, a positive mindset, and financial peace of mind are her cornerstones. She now mentors investors on personal growth and property investing. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Jelena van Wieren. Hi Jelena, it's a thrill to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Oh, thank you, Stuart. Great to be here. Doing well, and it's always well and not well all together makes it life, right? So it's good and bad, all together, I would say. But dealing with that very well, thank you.
So, Jelena, tell us about your story, about the highs, lows, challenges, and the successes that you've had.
The story started actually 20 years ago. Just shortly started to invest in the real estate because of the fears of not to have your own home or traveling around the world and not to have any income or a certain profession, and got into it with actually lots of passion. Passion not for income, but for the creation of it. So it did combine both, and I've been very successful first, I would say 15 years, until I wanted to have more. And more in order not to have more money, but to explore yourself more in a different field of the real estate or property development. As we all start with something what is affordable, like a small houses, I invested in Canada, then I moved to Europe and invested in Estonia, Montenegro, Germany, and then I end up investing in the UK. That's where actually I'm the longest time investing here due to certain reasons. And I've got into the property, which I am in right now. It's in my hotel. The property is 1,000 square meters. And it's got me into the problems. Problems basically on every single day during a couple of years. That's where I realize. And on your question, how you're doing, I'm doing bad and good because every day brings something. I don't see it bad anymore because I build up understanding of what is bad. I never actually say that word bad. I'm doing bad, yeah. But in some cases, yes. And what I did realize, so the development I went to, like this hotel, I bought a rundown building of 1,000 square meters just because I could afford it. By saving all this 15 years, I saved money. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do. That's in one place, one big project. And I did not realize, of course, because I didn't have experience, but I had lots of ambitions and I've had lots of confidence in myself because during financial crisis in 2008, I was making cash flow of 35% return on investment. And I thought, I can do all. and I will be successful. And I calculated, I've got some advisory, but we know even in small projects, things can go wrong, but in a big, huge project can go hugely wrong. And I did not know how to deal with that. And now I'm realizing it's not about money. It's about preparation, of course, but it's about how you accept those difficulties. And that's what I had to learn, how to change my character. I learned how to, of course, with some help, until I've gotten to the kind of like a black hole. And I realized things what I was not doing right about reactions on certain difficulties. And that was, I think this is the key of how we feel about the problems. So that's where I am. I'm putting it actually based off that conversation, how I've got there, based on who I am. And it's not about 4 walls and the roof and the amount of money. It's about how you get the money, who you are by getting money, who you are while you're working on the project, what you talk about. And very important part, I realize we should never hide our fears when we speak to professionals, because they're people as well, and they have to understand where you're coming from. I'm putting it actually more psychologically now, but that's the way it is. The hotel is completed after 5 years of working on it. I decided to make a small extension in the backyard, in the beer garden, extension of the roof where can be done like a breakfast or events, and to place the small microbrewery in it. So as we speak, actually, right after this meeting, after the podcast, I'm meeting with architect and engineer. QS is coming. And today is the start of the professional preparation of the project of the roof in the beer garden. So that's where I am. And also, one more thing, I decided to go back to smaller projects, which are buy-to-let. It looked to me very easy. It's like I can say, piece of cake, although it has difficulties in it as well. And what I realized, now I'm doing one project. Today is the signing of the completion of the purchase. Today's lots of things happen. And I already had some difficulties with that, although I went through more than 50 deals of buy-to-let. And you learn every single time you learn. So there is never, as I mentioned, I've been so confident into what I'm doing for the last 15 years by making money, saving from the buying, selling, from the cash flows, moving from country to country, my real estate investment. But even after 20 years, there are still situations, and it wasn't situation. It was me who created that situation. It came from my part of character, which I also looked into, and I realized that who am I in that little part of the completion, because I've got into the situation we have situations with every person we meet, the way they react and we react on them. I made my mistake this time, but anyways, completion is going through, things are corrected, and everything is in order. So you never can say, I am fully confident what I'm doing. I am confident what I'm doing, but I know now I'm confident that I can correct the mistake during the process. That's what I would say.
What an amazing story. And so many questions for you, Jelena, on that. And I'm really drawn to your personal journey. I mean, you're an amazing property developer, property investor. You've been doing it for many years and in many different countries as well. So I have some questions around that. The first one is your exploration of yourself. Where do you find that energy? And you mentioned earlier on, it wasn't really the motivation of the money, but the journey. And where do you find it in yourself to find the energy to do what you do?
First of all, I do not like incompleted things. If something incomplete, even something unsaid, I have to complete to make it clear, even to go back to the issue or unfinished things. It has to be completed. And it drives me constantly. I'm thinking about it. So to get rid of those thoughts, which something I haven't done, I just wanted to go back to finish it and go. So whenever I start, I have to finish. That's the number one. Even I saw the project was difficult, like with the construction, but I could not finish it because I don't know what I can expect in the future. And it's my learning process. And that's what was my decision. And if it is my decision, I want to have it done. It used to be, I felt like I wanted to have validation from my parents. It's more from closest people. It's not anymore. Again, when you get into difficulties, emotional and with difficulties with yourself, you're looking for professional help or some sort of courses or development courses, self-development. So that's where I realize I am doing it for myself and not for my mom and dad, or not for friends, definitely. So that's just for myself. So I am more clear with myself, and I had to understand who am I. Yeah, that's the way I deal with things to complete. And also passion. I love to learn new things. Definitely. And if I stop in a halfway, I don't know what I would know when I finish it. So it's a benefit for yourself to more confidence. And since actually I've completed the building, I've got the confidence of training other people how to invest. Because I can see the fears of people, where are they going to? Because again, the technical part of it is clear. We can write down numbers on the paper. We can draw the project, and it looks simple from the side. But when we enter, we work with people, and people's relationship to you would come from you yourself. And now, by talking to young investors, I can clearly see in the small things, in the small details, within 5 minutes of a couple of questions, you can already see fears, you can see how person dealing with things. But it's not 5 minutes fix, of course. It takes some experience. But that's my passion. That's what also drives to complete.
Of course. And you mentioned fear a few times and reactions in property development, in construction in particular, where the different parties are constantly reacting themselves and others are reacting to their reactions. And it becomes very confrontational at times. It becomes, it's a massive industry for litigation. I think at the last count, the legal disputes in construction is a £5 billion industry in the UK. So I think it's amazing that you're very much on looking at the person, maybe the people we're working with, as opposed to, yes, we all have to have T's and C's and contracts, but you mentioned in your training courses that the first thing you look at is what might be their fears, what may be them as a person, how they react to things. So it seems to me that what you're saying is that you have to develop yourself in order to develop your business. I'd like to just explore that around. You've learned about how your own self in terms of your reactions, and then circumstances when things go wrong, for example. How do you react with the team around you?
First of all, a noticeable reaction when you don't like something or you're against something. The best thing is, of course, to open up yourself and to say, in this part, I'm afraid of. For example, just this morning, I had 2 paragraphs of the contract. I asked to explain it first. What does it mean, to make sure that I understand it? So in this case, I reacted like it's too strict financially. It isn't my understanding. So it is a reaction because I react back. by thinking that somebody wants to come and get it, right? So that's the fear that someone will take away from you something. So then, because there are two fears, to lose or to gain. So there's the two things in life. That's only two fears. So then you realize, what are you afraid? To lose or to gain what you don't want? So in this case, I ask for explanation. Instead of reacting of what I think those two paragraphs about, I'm asking first to understand the other party. And then I will see what is my next reaction without building up the story about it. So that's where I realized that that's the way I would deal with some fears, I would say. Another way, when, of course, as you said, people also react on what you react, and that can create some negativity. So in this case, it's better just straight away open up. It's not necessarily straight away. It's just to understand it first. And sometimes you ask questions, you understand people, and you think, that's good that I did not react. I did not show my reaction. And it's all the time helps. Every single time it works, because every time when we react, we think one way, and then person may close down and never explain. So in this case, it's people to each other have to be open. And what I notice, it's not to be a prejudice, or there's more men working in the industry, in this industry, especially like with the finance and the construction. I would say even 98%, I think, men working. Yep. And of course, it comes from, you can feel more power, who is right more. Between ladies, it's a different way of conversation would be. And sometimes it's difficult to keep up conversation. Myself too. I notice that if I'm moving away from the subject, I need to put it back. But that's a nature, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, just to accept, to see person as a person. That's what I would say. Say not like a man, not like a woman. Just deal with things how it has to be done on the win-win situation to everybody, and feel good. That's the balance needed to be in this industry.
The other thing you mentioned was good and bad, not necessarily differentiating them, or looking at that in an equanimous way, in an even way. That's a really interesting statement to make, because quite often when things are good, we're getting excited and happy, and when things are bad, we're getting angry and reacting. But what you said about being even around good and bad, I could imagine that philosophy would help the construction industry a lot. That we took an equitable, equanimous view. Where does that, for you, I mean, how does that help you? Where does that come from with you?
Oh, it's definitely from self-development, and during the difficult times when I reflected that it is in me and not in the situation. I went through a couple of courses like Landmark Forum, like I listened to Jordan Peterson a lot on the YouTube. So there are some quite a good philosophers and psychologists quite popular. So I realized, and I started to look in myself in some subjects or during the daytime. What we used to do is we always look at the bad, because they related to fear. They're much stronger. And then I always look, what is good thing about this happen? Or what is good thing today happen? And they are like 50-50. One builder told me amazing thing which works every day. Every morning, I wake up and I say something good gonna happen today, without thinking what is going to happen. By saying it, my husband using it, and he also said amazing things happen because you tell yourself to look into the good things. Every single day, something good happening. It really gives you lifting up your mood and seeing bad things differently. So there's always a balance, but there's subconsciously, there's a constant happiness of something happening. And then at the end of the day, you think, I knew it's going to be something good. And every single day you find something good happen to you.
That's so important. I find that too, when you take that positive approach. And also, I kind of think there's something I think about is if, for example, you've got a decision to make, or there's a road that you're following and there's a fork in the road, and one appears to be the good road and one appears to be the bad road. And I kind of think that most people would say, well, I'm going to take the good road. But what I've learned in life is that positive and negative live together. They collude together. So if you're taking the good road, there'll be challenges along the way. If you take the bad road, there'll be positive things along the way. So it kind of helps me to be objective and equanimous about life. And well, if it's a challenge, this is a challenge, then I know there's a way I can sit back and look at the pieces of the puzzle, because I know there'll be a piece that will go in there that will get me started again. Yeah, if I take the easy route or the route that seems to riches or the good decision, I know looking at the puzzle, there'll be a piece of the puzzle that's going to be a challenge. So I need to find that one and put that one in to get me going again.
True. It's the same in development. When something is going wrong or you lose some professional person, then another one will come in place who is actually going to be with you for years of your development journey. You think if bad things didn't happen, good wouldn't appear. It's always a balance.
Balance. Yeah. So what do you find? So you talked about the hotel, that large project that you did. Tell us a bit more about the challenges of that, and particularly around the investment, the contract, how it all fitted together. What were the main challenges and how you overcame them?
Oh, definitely. Many of them, and relates to QS specifically, or QS or project development funds. Just to be more in the numbers and explain the situation from a developer side. If I borrow £100,000 for development under 10%, because it's usually it's development loan, usually quite expensive, I would put 10,000 or 10% annual, £100,000. And we start the project. Of course, you have to go through the architect, engineer, all the calculation. It takes some time. But you needed to have this money available. So you make this available, and before, of course, you make the plan timelines. You discuss how long time will it take to produce the drawings, calculations of how much it will cost, and so on. And of course, the invoice is starting up. The architect will charge you, QS will go through the list, make a list, also will charge you, and so on. So if there are any delays on the process, someone is not replying on time and the deadline already passed, you have interest rate to pay. And the interest rate, in case if you have already, usually you already have a cash flow from somewhere where you put money in to pay interest rate, you still have some urgencies happening with another portfolio, which has actually recently happened to me, had some delays. Then one of the tenants moved out from the house. I had to put 20,000 into refurbishment. So the money, of course, saved money goes there, and then there's a delays of payment of invoices coming up. So to professional people, right? So there is a timeline where things can happen, where you can lose the money, and then you don't have any preparation. Development is not starting up. You already had emergency happen once in 5 years, and it will happen exactly in that moment. And when you go back to when people are ready to produce the preparation for the project, you're already wiped out financially. Nobody sees it. In this case, I realized just recently, my fear of losing people, my fear of losing professional people, I did not speak out about it. I don't want to lose them because I feel I need them for the project, because it took some time to find them. But at the same time, it feels it's been unrespectful So there's a lots of feelings and thoughts going back to actually personality. But what happened is from the cash flow, you just draining down when there's delays. And when it comes to the moment of start building up, you're already in such a tight budget. And in this case, again, people getting ill, they have trips with their kids to holidays. Suddenly they say, I have a different agenda for next half a year. And this agenda again moving for another couple of months. So, and then in the end, you're getting stressed because of money, like if I would say 100,000 and it's 1,000 every month coming out of the budget, you're getting less and less and less money towards the end of the project. But then it's usually development loan has to be returned in a certain time, like usually 1 year plus 6 months extension, depends on the investor, depends on the situation, amount, condition of the investor who is giving you lending. Then another part stressing out because you need to return money. So in this case, you are going back to the lender and explain the situation. You go back to architect, you go back to the engineers and the constructors, depends on which part of the project you are in. And you're going between two parties and you're getting completely exhausted, stressed. You start pulling out money from your own budget, but your own money is not also on the bank account automatically being typed in the bank statement. They come from the earnings. There's another human being, I would say, of people think if you're doing such a things and if you already have the hotel, you have millions behind you. That's the appearance, but you cannot remove it from anyone, or if people think, oh, this is government made, owns the airport. They have lots of money coming from taxes, actually coming from your own salary. Nobody cares about nobody, no, it's not a good word. Usually appearance, that's what tells people, and then they behave based on that. But they don't know what is behind it. And this is very important to put it statement straight away in the beginning of the conversation when you start the project. And so that's the way it is. And it will, if we are in, we are fully in. If we are not fully in, if we're not committed, we cannot go for the project. Because now I choose to have peace of mind and not to look good in the project development world. But let's get back to the cash flow. That's what's happening. Delays, it creates the budget smaller and creates more stress around the business, around the life as well, yeah.
Coming back to what you mentioned about having peace of mind, a lot of us in development scene and in construction scene, we're always very nervous to talk about when money's tight. Because we think if we're open and transparent about, yes, we have cash flow problems, we think everyone's going to abandon us. We think we might lose clients or customers or suppliers. So a lot of companies and individuals keep that information close to their chest and try and work things out so nobody actually finds out. And as you say, people think they're okay. I'm wondering if there's anything we could do to change that culture. If people were more open and transparent about talking about the cash flow, the finances at the front end, perhaps we wouldn't have so many insolvencies or so many project failures, if we were only to club together and to talk about that and find ways of moving forward, I mean, how do you feel about it? I mean, is it wise to discuss with the team, or who would you discuss those difficulties with? Or would you think there's situations where actually I would need to keep that confidential?
No, it has to be transparent. Fully agree. I even feel like to have an Excel list with what money available at this moment, what is the interest rate from that, whose charges are listed, what is the agreement, and everybody, architect, QS, engineer, business advisor, everybody sees the same document on the daily basis, because the costs will keep adding up and we can see how much left in the project. From my point, the way I starting the project, let's say in February, we had a Zoom call with architect, business advisor, engineer, and we discussed about the next steps. And the engineer would say, my costs are, let's say, 3,500 for that specific part of the work. And to apply, for example, for the local municipality to get approval for the sewage, sustainable sewage. So it's been done a lot of researches. So it got into his stage to work on it. And I said, so let's discuss time and money, because this part is like, how you call it, elephant in the room, right? And I want to be clear, anything what you charge me, in case if tomorrow, by some reason, you are not in the project, whatever reason, I can have this work, which I paid for, I can take it and move it to the next person, next professional engineer, architect, who will not charge me anymore for that part, but will build up the next stages and charge me for the next stages. And that's what I like to have. And the way I would do if the work is not completed, let's say we're applying, I'm giving just example as to explain my approach to financial discussion of the start of the project. I asked, how do you charge? Because of, for example, you prepare for the application, you do application, but then you need to get a feedback from municipality. And then in the end, for example, if you're not here, I need to pass it to somebody else to discuss it. Somebody else will charge me as well, right? So in this case, the person said, I will charge you 50% for that out of 3,500. And then when we get permission, I will charge you another 50%. Clear. A few months later, I'm receiving full invoice of 3,500 on the day of application. So in this case, the trust, or I was very, very clear about the way I work about time and money. And we had an agreement with other people on Zoom. That's the way it's going to be. But then this agreement is not being kept. Now I receive the full charge. So means if by some reason this person is not in the project, I have to hire somebody else. Will take some time and will charge me again for communication with the municipality to get the application approved. So this is something what I would repeat again, but in this case, if it's second time happen, I want to have peace of mind. I am not working and I will stop working with that specific person, because as longer you get into the project, as more you get involved in financial responsibilities, and more difficult to find and replace somebody else, because the works would start. So that's the way I like to deal with time and money, and be clear in the beginning when we do agreement about timing and money.
Let's continue with our fascinating discussion in a moment. But first, I'd like to give listeners the opportunity to dive into a world of financial enlightenment with our sponsor, Know Your Numbers. If you want to master your numbers and unlock your business's true potential, and if you're ready to take control of your financial destiny, click the Know Your Numbers link in the podcast notes to find out more. In the meantime, let's get back to our guest. I like your approach, because quite often it's left a little bit loose. You know, people are kind of not really clear about, they might have the money side of it or the time side of it, but not contractually tie the two together. And in the construction industry, we often use standard forms of contract, which are often amended. But, you know, to have the approach where you have that kind of personal agreement where this is how we're going to behave, this is how we're going to proceed. You know, you mentioned if they're not on the project, what sort of things have you experienced where they start the job or start the project and don't finish it?
Actually, at the very beginning, I already can see how a person is communicating and committed, even on the communication time. And when people say, I will be there at 12 o'clock, and before 12 I did not receive the message of, sorry, I'm late on traffic, or just within a few minutes at least, and I'm expecting person to turn up at exactly 12 o'clock. That's what I would do. And I would do if I stuck in traffic or if I'm on a phone calls, I will try my best to get in. There are sometimes, of course, situations, but it's obvious situations like I've lost my phone and I couldn't reach that I'm late. But I want to ask you, you mentioned in your previous question about the way contractors work, QS, and how you said you're afraid to lose your customer. In which sense, how is that from your side as QS or as architects, engineers around you while you're working and you discuss the situation, what is happening with you guys as a professional team towards the developer? How is that for you?
If a contractor was to go to their client, whether that's the developer or they're a main contractor, and say, look, I've got some cash flow issues and that may affect the delivery of my service. And so you might think, coming back to, we agreed, I wanted to have that trust that you were going to do this particular job by this time for that particular fee or that particular price. Now you're telling me that you've actually had a problem on another project. I suppose similar to your situation where you had that other property that you had to put the 20 grand in, and then it made you tight on this particular project. So in the same way, I call it's kind of Peter to pay Paul in a way, and I talk about that a lot. And I know it goes on in all businesses and it's prevalent in the construction industry. And I think it's a root cause and it's a challenge that we all have to improve cash flow. Because if we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, we're immediately slowing cash down because we're having to do these extra decisions, these extra negotiations, this extra juggling act, if you like, which takes time to sort out, doesn't it? And conversations to have. So if I was to come to you and say, look, we've got this issue, I've had an issue on another project, it's either going to take my time up for 3 or 4 days, or it actually means I've got to push some money there, I think as a client, you would lose confidence. You think, what am I going to do about this? So I think that's why people are reluctant to give the full picture. But I think in a cultural change, if we could, and this is a dream, but if we felt that we were all in it together. So let's say, rather than looking at ourselves as individuals, we looked at the world from a collective conscience or a collectiveness, that we're all connected in some way. Then if our supplier or our professional advisor had a problem and he felt open, and it was really, it's all about, if it's on a project, it's not just his problem, it's all of our problems, so in that, from that perspective, if it would take a change of mindset and a change of culture and a big shift for us to all look at, well, why are we all here? What are we all doing? Are we aligned are our values aligned? And if we are, and we're all in it together, then if somebody has a problem like that, it could be like, we all have that problem. And that way, in theory, we could all muck in and sort that problem out. What can we do to sort it out? Because I know your abilities. I appointed you because I know you're the best person for the job. Unfortunately, you've had this issue. So I'm still believing you in delivering the project, but you've got this challenge. You've got this mountain to get over, or this hoop to go through. I think that probably one of the problems we have is the way that traditional contracts are structured. And traditional standard forms of contracting, there's always the right and the obligation, the compliance, the default. So you're either complying or you're in default. And if you're in default, you're in breach of contract. And if you're in breach of contract, then the contract has certain remedies. So it's more about the contract of, they're in breach of contract, so their contract has to flows down. So it's more about that person's got problems. So contractually, we push them away, and contractually we're pushing away, rather than saying, well, let's have a look at it, whatever that problem is. Can we resolve it and move forward? So there's two camps. There's those that would think it's a pipe dream for people to feel that they're working as a collective, and some people actually have a business plan that makes money out of the standard form of contract, the breaches of contract, the holding someone in breach, the pushing somebody away. So in construction, sometimes it'll be, say, the main contractor is running out of budget, or the developer's running out of budget. They'll use the supply network, the supply chain, to fund part of that. And even the less scrupulous ones might say, for example, they had a large project, and let's say the bricklaying package was there, and that bricklaying package and the main contractor was over budget by let's say 100 grand. Through the contract, they would start to ask the bricklayer for substantiation about his applications, and they would try to blame the bricklayer for the delay, and the delay would cost money, and then they're starting to make contra charges and deduct money. And all the time, what they're doing is that they're reducing their amount of liability to back up their budget, and then they'll get to a point where the bricklayer's got no income. He's still paying his bricklayers, and they say, well, you're in breach of contract now. We're going to have to terminate your contract, which saves them the outstanding money to the bricklayer. Could be 100 grand. That deals with our budget problem, and we'll just get another bricklayer in. So there are the scrupulous that will use the system to cover over if they've got problems, which is one side of the extreme. But the other side is, I think, the more positive way. And if we're thinking about the journey rather than the end, the piece of music rather than the end of the piece of music, so we enjoy each piece rather than having to wait to the end to enjoy the piece of music, so if we're working together, which I think is much more virtuous, and I think at the end of the day, better for cash flow, better for communities, better for mental health, better for our peace of mind, and we work together as a collective. On the other side, we can say, okay, Mr. Bricklayer, we've actually got a budget problem, so we're going to struggle to pay you. So let's sit down and let's work out. But there's unlikely a main contractor is going to say that, because he could be in breach of contract. He could risk the bricklayer walking off site, and he doesn't want to lose the bricklayer. He doesn't, like you said, it takes a long time to build a relationship, to get the right people to work with, to get the right professional team to work with, to get the right supply network to work with, the right contractors to work with, and the prospect of losing them. If you're going to tell them we've got a budgetary problem, we've got trouble switching finance, or the finance company have re-looked at their risk profile and their drawdown's going to be less this month, so we can't pay you the full amount. So they're reluctant to say that because they don't want to lose. And it goes back to you're either losing or you're gaining, and that's where the fear comes in. So I think from that perspective, I think that's I would say the challenge is to being open and transparent, although it does happen. It's really lovely and refreshing hearing your approach as a developer, because we don't normally hear the developer's side of things, and then we kind of point, start shooting missiles in all directions, and to hear that it's refreshing to understand the challenges that those that we're contracted to have as well, because quite often we just think of ourselves. What are we getting paid? Is challenges do happen, finances, we want to get off one finance onto another, or there might be a challenge on another portfolio or another project that we have to deal with, and we have to kind of juggle stuff. At the end of the day, if the developers robbing Peter to pay Paul, the main contractors robbing Peter to pay Paul, the supply chain network are robbing Peter to pay Paul, that's all right until the dominoes fall over, and then it becomes a dispute, delay, disruption. So I like your refreshing approach, and it's something that I would like to encourage and engender, that we work more as a collective. Yes, we do have to have contracts, but maybe the contracts could include part about this is how we're going to behave with each other if these problems arise. And I think that's maybe partly the missing link.
Mm. I am getting a lot from your story. It's not a story, it's a fact. The conversation based on facts, what you've done for so many years as QS. And I love to hear it more, because if we understand each other, we know how to work. Because what I realize, we're afraid to lose each other. And we don't want to look professional because someone kick us out from the project. At the same time, what happened as well when the developer is short on money, because life has happened. You will never be able to predict parts of life where the problem will appear. It can be even in a personal, another part is the personal life. If happened to me in 2014, I think it was, builder was getting divorced. And it affected my project. On the project where I was supposed to put about 30,000 on the construction, even less, I've lost 10,000. It's a big part of, and I've lost about 1 year by looking for another builder. In the meanwhile, a lot of materials have been wasted by sitting in the house. It's just because, first of all, he got depressed, and then he completely disappeared. Although he was the best friend of my joint venture partner. After 30 years of friendship, that could happen. You would never expect it. That's what I always keep in mind, and like to have also personal connection with my professional team to understand in which emotional state the person is. It's kind of like, sounds a little bit maybe too much, but that's the life can bring also some problems into your projects.
I think it's really important what you're saying, and just checking in on the emotional state of the people that you're working with in construction, especially, mental health issues. Suicide is very high in the construction industry, and maybe at that initial outset, maybe it's worth setting out, okay, here's our contract, this is the way we're going to work, how we're going to behave with each other if those life events happen. What's our backup plan? What happens if you suddenly are going through a divorce? What happens if you're suddenly ill? What happens if you're finding that you're suffering from something's triggered, you're feeling depressed, you can't function properly? Because you're right, exactly what you said earlier is about we're working with people, and I think sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we think we're working with contracts, but we're actually working with people, aren't we? And when your builder doesn't turn up on a Monday, and like you say, if you arrange to meet someone at 12 o'clock and they're not there and they haven't given you a call, then that's a very, very important indicator of their commitment to your project, to you, or it could be that something's wrong and they haven't been able to contact you. And so I think making things clear, like you say, make things clear at the beginning that, this is the way we want to behave. If we've made an appointment to meet at 12, we need to meet at 12. And if you don't call me, or you should call me, or I should call you if I can't make it, there's a problem. And if you don't call, I'll assume there's something wrong and I'll try and contact you. And I think that's very important, because sometimes these small things, it's like big doors swing on small hinges, don't they? And sometimes it's the small things end up creating the biggest problems and the things we overlook. And we all like to think, we're all in the development game, we're in construction, we're all big and roughy tufty, we've got a contract that we have to fulfill. 9 times out of 10, it's because somebody along the line there hasn't been able to do their job for whatever reason, and have been frightened to say anything about it. I've got this issue coming up, but it affects. So if I went into depression, or if I disappeared for a couple of days, it's going to affect your project. So it's best to work out how we're going to deal with those situations. Let's be open and honest beforehand, because even though I will need support, that is affecting your project, which is a commercial enterprise. You've got investors' money that you're responsible for, that you've got to fulfill the project and make it profitable and make it work. So I think we don't do enough of what happens if
Mhm.
there is a problem, a death in the family, a family issue. Let's be open and honest how we deal with those situations, because quite often they can be the things that affect the commercial viability of a project. And I don't think we put enough weight on it. And some people use it as an excuse. I mean, for example, a lot of people now, they'll say, oh, yeah, I've got COVID. I tested positive for COVID this week, so sorry, I can't come in. As if it's their right to affect the commercial viability of the project. But with all sympathy to people that might have COVID or be ill, if there's something in place that deals a contingency of that, so it might be, if I'm off, I will provide a substitute. So in the event that I'm off for a few days, we're going to identify who your substitute's going to be. Now we're going to identify a locum. So coming back to your question, actually, Jelena, about the professional team and them not being able to finish the project in the RICS, what they have is, and it's a bylaw of theirs, is that if you're a practitioner, you need a locum. So you appoint what they call a locum.
What does that mean?
A locum, yeah. So it's somebody that, if, for example, you're ill or you can't continue a project for any reason, or you're absent, or you go on holiday, you appoint a locum at the beginning. So a locum is that was a QS firm that you was using, a QS. You would, at the beginning of the project, say, who's your locum going to be, in case you're off on holiday. And they would appoint another QS or another QS firm that will step into their shoes for the time that they're on holiday. So that's something to organize at the front end, so that you get continuity. And that could go down the line. So the bricklayer, okay, so if your company, you went on holiday, who's going to step into your shoes while you're on holiday? And it's not a loose agreement. So if it's a quantity surveyor or an architect, they will have, and you can require them to have, a proper locum agreement between them and the person that's going to step into their shoes. So the person steps into their shoes, they have an agreement, they get paid what you would have paid the other guy for that period of time until they come back, and then they come back. So it has to be an agreement, but it would be something that not many people do, but I would consider would be a good thing to do down the line with your professional team, with your contractor, key individuals. So the site foreman, very important person. What happens if the site foreman has a personal emergency or crisis? Who's going to step into his shoes? So if you have a locum agreement at the beginning, so Mr. Site Foreman, who will step into your shoes, we're going to appoint Mr. Joe Bloggs, and we're going to have a proper agreement with Mr. Joe Bloggs with a novation clause to you. So you can exercise that novation clause in the event that they can't. So you get continuity for your project.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much for the tip. I'm going to use it today on the meeting. Actually, there's one thing I want to go back, but not back. I remember now what I wanted to mention about that's also relates to if something happened in a different areas of your business and where the money has to go and cover up. That's what professional team may afraid of, that something else will happen. There is we never know what can happen. We all try to do and to deal with things. One thing just needs to be open. You cannot really list of areas of life and you can say I have a 50,000 saved in case of my houses needs to be restructured, totally going to a different parts of the project. I'm trying to get it's not enough of cash flow, I would say, to cover up all the areas, because every time you start new project with a fully different, I would say, economy. Family has own economy. It relies on certain income. The portfolio of the buy-to-lets, they have own income and savings. The project of the hotel, they have a different economical or budget and savings. But anything can happen, which can have to balance and have to be pulled out from somewhere. So in this case, you cannot really give all information out. Otherwise, what I noticed when people are not in the investment world, but they are earning as employees, or if they are on the self-employed, like most of architect professionals, like engineers, architects, QS, they rely on the project and that's their income as a self-employed. Maybe they would not really fully would understand, and it may scare them all the openness, the transparency of things. What I think, this is again, it's from my side, trying to explain to other side, and I see it's not always working, but also explanations can scare away people. That's why you don't want to, I would call it explanation, just as a general terms, but more transparency. You want other party understand that's where you are. The thing is, to me, you try to deal with things not to have a different sort of agreement or starting agreement. I've seen one time only, one agreement starting from. This agreement is about to keep communication and to keep relationship good in any cases whenever will happen. That's the first line of the agreement. And when you read it, I'm not saying like literally how it was, but like it was beautifully mentioned. And then you start reading agreement in a different way, with a different approach. And that was most powerful agreement, I would say, I've seen. And I think this has to stay to keep the relationship between people good. No matter what happened, it has to be treated each other. Don't use any words which can harm other people. To listen till the end what other person's saying from their point of view, and to be listened as well. And then it has to be said on time, or even in advance, because with finance, a little bit in advance can happen. It needs to be clarified straight away. But because of the fact what you already, where you are as a professional, either developer, QS, architect, it's already shown that you've been dealing with things to get to this level. When there's a lack of 3,000, 5,000 of delay of paying of invoices, when you've done already a bigger job and you completed it, it's already showing that you will do complete it. The only thing is about time to solve the issue. Sometimes when it's COVID, completely everything shut down. How much time, we don't know. What we know is we just need to wait and deal with things whenever we have now and deal with each other. Some people would really start threatening by, let's say, I was 2 weeks from getting mortgage. 2 weeks. It was on the 6th of March, I was approved for the mortgage, when 19th of March, 19 or 20th, when COVID and everything shut down, all the applications went back. And 1st of April, I was supposed to return the loan. And I've got lots of threats, a lot, to even mentioning my kids. That's how tough it was. Of course, this is now even personal relation. They said they know where my kid's going to school.
That's shocking.
Shocking. And you are, as adults, you have to stay home. You cannot walk kids to school. That was the rules. And, for months, you have to find the money. But in this case, I knew there's people for a few years, and I could hear once in a while some sentences. And you always believe it's not going to happen to you, but you feel that in that way of area. I don't know, was it done or not? Or maybe it's just the words in threats, but does not matter that someone could do it. I don't know. You cannot really ignore it. And then meanwhile, there are a couple of other ones really giving a lot of pressure. So which one, if I get money, which one I can solve it? So it's force majeure, when things happen with COVID, and then suddenly you just completely naked, I would say. So yeah, that's another part to understand. Yeah, the other party. So yeah, it was a lot of you live in fear non-stop, 100% of your time.
That is a dark side to construction and a dark side of any business when, and those things do happen. And, what can you do? People could be your best friend, but when things go wrong, they soon turn against you. In a construction contract as well, you can be working happily as a team. When things go wrong, people can soon turn against you, normally a commercial basis, but as you've experienced, the threats, the death threats, the threats to your family does happen. And people that you thought were working with you in a constructive manner then turn into something else. And I think that's very important. It probably reinforces initial choosing people that to work with, that you're working with long term, that you can know and trust. And making clear, this is the way we're going to behave if this happens or if that happens. And actually really working with people that hold the same values as you, maybe holding the same philosophy about life as you. I'm working with these guys, they're going to play a key role in my project. What is their background? What do they do on a weekend? Do they go out to the pub getting drunk all weekend? Or are they a family person, or are they, are they following some philosophy of passivity and non-violence? Is that their values? Or, what's the likelihood of how this is going to escalate with them, how they're going to react if things go wrong and I can't pay them? And that's the big thing. And I think to really kind of look at that at the beginning, I think is very important, isn't it?
Yes. But just getting back to people, we spoke a lot about more difficulties and challenges, because that's the way we feel like there's more difficulties in our work or in our world of profession. But there are some very good things, and I think it can be given as example how to, and on the real personal examples, because of course we collect and we know from experience how someone can get divorced or someone delay. There is someone can get an accident, and an accident with brain damage. That what happened as well recently, and the person cannot explain. Talking about man and woman, a woman would say, I have this, and they will say lists of things, what they are worried about and what hurts them. They don't worry about to look bad. When men usually try to cover it, they don't like to go to the doctor, not to look ill or whatever reason. I'm just taking also examples from... correct. But if by saying that I've had some injury and I cannot produce drawings because my hand is broken, for example, that is okay. That is also clear to understand what person is going through. So you understand that you put project away on the side for a couple of months or 1 month, depends on, or somebody else replacing needs some time to get into the project. So this is also okay to speak about it. But there are some good parts, and I think that was amazing parts what happened to me, and I think that was a life important to me. And actually it's very difficult to find builders like what I have now, and I work with this building company already for 5 years. I've had difficulties. It was miscalculation of the building of the hotel, and I just feel like to mention it, to really to speak out about this heroism, about being brave as a person, as a professional, so it was underestimated like 50%, and it was during the COVID time. And I'm in the middle of the project, money was running down, and the builder took over. I was looking for money, of course. In the meanwhile, I was refinancing a couple of houses I had buy-to-lets to bring some funds into the project in order not to stop. But the builder took all responsibility for 2 months. He was paying himself to the construction builders, the owner of the building company, to keep project going. while I was looking for money. And when his funds were running down, he was saying he will keep amount of people in order just to keep up, like going step by step, while he has to work somewhere else. It is so big. And, I can say this is dream of my life, to build this hotel, to have the hotel, to own the hotel. How I know how it is, I built my dream. And to me, it's a life important situation. And it kept me emotionally peaceful during those couple of months. Which I have amazing amount of gratefulness, And actually with building company I'm working now, every time if something happens, if I don't have funds, I'm mentioning I am looking for, but I like to pay as soon as possible in the end of the week to pay off for the week which was passed. And I know there's so much integrity. I will give another example, and I think this is something what any developer will notice. If you are the builder and listening to this podcast, if you show your integrity just this simple example, during the COVID, only deliveries would come to the project, like a delivery of wood and so on. And it was a part of wood, which was very expensive at that time. It went up like 4 times price around April time. We had delivered a lot of beams or some wooden parts, which wasn't ours. There was a mistake. The builder actually called them up and they say it was delivery, but it's not our. We could cut it and use it for something else, right? Nice couple of thousand pounds to be delivered for free. Or he would just directly clean it up and he said, this is not ours, please come to pick it up. Or I don't remember, maybe he took it and brought it to the store. There was another 3 tons of sand have been delivered when we ordered only 2. I went with him to the store and he said, I'm paying for extra ton of sand, which you delivered to us. It wasn't for us, but I'm paying for it because I still need it. And they were shocked. They said, you could just have it and you don't have to pay it. I mean, I am respecting it. I cannot explain how much. And I know if something would happen in my related situation to me, I know that is his way of working, to have integrity. So in case of something, and I'm living in Amsterdam and I have projects here in UK, and it's quite difficult sometimes to really trust from the side. It's like, oh, something went a little bit off, which is not like, I have questions, instead of thinking like trying to overcharge me or buying extra materials on the site and using it for own project or something like that, I'm not even thinking about it. I know that there's something what I don't know. And usually when I pick up the phone, I call, there's always a clear, obvious reason for a certain decision. So that's why to work with people you trust it gives you peace of mind. It gives you a life. You get your life back and enjoyment in the project. Love the journey. I'm so excited. Today I'm signing the purchase of the house and we're working on that project. It's a small house, 4 bedrooms. I'm excited about it. And I know I can go with kids to travel on vacation and I know things will be completed and I know it will be done. If something not the way I like, but maybe on the taste of the builder who will make best decision to do it, that's okay. If there's a hook will be on a different side of the wall, or that's okay. It's a small thing. But the bigger thing is it's a trust and transparency.
Time for a quick fire round now, Jelena?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So first question, How do you start your day?
Oh, from my 6:30 in the morning, and I said, something good gonna happen today. I got up, made my bed, get ready, and started to work. That was my start of the day.
When are you most productive?
Most productive when I have sport done on a regular basis, when I drink enough water to hydrate myself, and when I feel control of my thoughts, that's where I am most productive.
What's something new happening in your life right now?
Oh, I'm completely going back to the same projects which actually gave me so much profit. I'm going back to the boring stuff. And I see what happened. I realize my fears were way more and clear, and it gives my life also much easier. That's what new things happening.
What does adventure look like to you?
Oh, it's unexpected. You don't know what you don't know. I'm excited for that. That's adventure. In real life, in the personal life, in the friendship life, in the projects, in the trips. I just let it go and I open up the door. I'm very curious what's going to happen.
What thing would you love to do that might surprise your friends and family?
That's a tricky one. Quirky one. Quirky one. What surprised them? Wow, what a nice question. Well, I do cheat eating chocolates. When I'm not saying I am, I do. And I'm accepting. I love it. I love it.
Name a challenge that you overcame that changed your life.
Oh, definitely the hotel building. This a huge step up. Yeah.
Who or what inspires and motivates you?
Oh, many people. Many people. Achievers, from my point of view, achievers in a certain area again of life. But kids, my kids inspire me. I learn from them a lot. I see how the human being developed. And I can see what we are losing or blocking ourselves from being abundant. And they definitely both, I have a boy and a girl, and both of them are my biggest motivators, I would say.
What does success mean to you?
Satisfaction, fulfillment, self-realization, and human love, I would say. Love, that's...
What advice would you give your young self? Thanks for joining us on Construction Cashflow, sponsored by Know Your Numbers. Remember, when you know your numbers, you're in control of your destiny. Keep building your success story, and don't forget to explore further by following the link in the podcast notes.